The door at the edge of the mind. There is a threshold between ordinary perception and something else. Most people never cross it. A small number have, by accident, by illness, by the edge of death. They come back describing the same things. Light that is more real than light. A sense that everything is connected. And a certainty that what we call normal consciousness is not the full picture. One man crossed that threshold deliberately, documented exactly what was on the other side, built a framework for understanding it, and then spent the rest of his life trying to explain what the crossing actually means. The establishment never forgave him for it. His name was Aldous Huxley, and almost nothing you were taught about him is the part that matters. Part 1. Who most people think he was. If you've heard of Huxley, you've heard of Brave New World. Dystopian fiction, required reading, a warning about a future controlled not by force, but by pleasure, drugs, entertainment, manufactured happiness. Maybe you've heard of Doors of Perception, the essay about taking mescaline, the one that named a rock band. That's usually where the mainstream version stops. Huxley the drug experimenter. Maybe Huxley the eccentric British intellectual. But that framing misses the entire second half of his life. Because after Doors of Perception, Huxley didn't become a countercultural icon. He became something harder to categorize. He became a researcher into the structure of consciousness itself. Part 2. The reducing valve. The part most people never reach. In Doors of Perception, Huxley described what mescaline did, but more importantly, he described what it undid. He borrowed a concept from the philosopher Henri Bergson. The idea, the brain is not a generator of consciousness, it is a filter, a reducing valve. Its job, biologically, evolutionarily, is to take the full spectrum of reality and narrow it down to only what's useful for survival. Food, threat, reproduction, status. The brain blocks everything else out. Not because everything else isn't there, but because if you perceived everything at once, the full signal, you would be non-functional. Huxley's claim, mescaline didn't add anything to his mind. It temporarily turned the filter down. And what came through? The colors, the impossible depth of a flower, the sense that every object was vibrating with interior significance. That wasn't hallucination. That was reality. The unfiltered version. The one the brain spends every second making sure you don't see. Part 3. What he actually found. The part that connects to something much older. Now here's where it gets strange. What Huxley described under mescaline was not new. He recognized it. From mystical literature, from Sufi poetry, from the Tibetan Book of the Dead, from the accounts of Christian contemplatives in the Middle Ages. Every tradition that had developed a serious practice of inner exploration. Prayer, fasting, breathwork, plant medicine, extended darkness, described arriving at the same place. A state where the ordinary sense of being a separate self dissolves. Where what's left is something that feels more like pure awareness, not awareness of something, just awareness itself. Luminous, borderless, ancient. Huxley called it mind at large, the unfiltered reality. What's there when the reducing valve goes quiet? And he pointed out something that should have caused a bigger controversy than it did. Every major religion on earth has a contemplative tradition that is trying to reach exactly this state. The mystic core of Christianity, Sufism, Kabbalah, Advaita Vedanta, Zen, Tibetan Buddhism. Different maps, different vocabularies, same destination. He was not saying they were all taking drugs. He was saying they were all, through different methods, finding ways to temporarily reduce the filter and reaching the same place on the other side. Part 4. The research nobody talks about. The part that was buried. After Doors of Perception, Huxley didn't retreat into mysticism. He went deeper into the research. He became closely connected with a circle of researchers working at the edge of what Western science was willing to officially acknowledge. He worked alongside Humphrey Osmond, the psychiatrist who coined the word psychedelic, and was running clinical trials on LSD and mescaline for treating alcoholism. Documented trials, with documented recovery rates that outperformed everything else available at the time. He was in contact with researchers at the Society for Psychical Research, a Victorian-era institution, serious scholars who had spent decades documenting anomalous experiences, telepathy, precognition, near-death accounts, verified cases of people knowing things they had no conventional means of knowing. Huxley wasn't dismissing this as folklore. He thought it was evidence. Evidence that consciousness doesn't behave the way the standard model says it should. That perception, under the right conditions, is not strictly bounded by the skull. He was building towards something, a unified framework, a theory of consciousness that could hold the mystical literature, the clinical research, and the anomalous data inside the same structure. He never finished it. Part 5. The Day Nobody Noticed. The closing, the part that lingers. On November 22, 1963, President John F. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas. The same day, Aldous Huxley died in Los Angeles. Almost no one noticed. His death was swallowed entirely by the news cycle. But here is what almost no one knows about the day he died. He was conscious until near the end. And as he slipped toward death, he asked his wife, Laura, to inject him with LSD. Not out of desperation, out of intention. He had written about death in his final novel, Island, as a threshold, a crossing. And he believed, based on everything he had studied, that how you met that threshold mattered. That consciousness, at the moment of dissolution, could be guided. Laura honored the request. She read to him as he died, softly, repeating, "Go forward, into the light, easy, gently, forward and up." The language she used matches almost word for word what Tibetan Buddhist monks say to the dying during the bardo, the transition state. She had not read the Tibetan Book of the Dead that morning. She said the words came to her naturally. Huxley spent his entire adult life pointing at something most people are trained not to look at. That the mind you are living inside right now is a narrowed-down, filtered version of something much larger. That the mystics weren't deluded. That the anomalous data isn't coincidence. That the threshold, the door, is real. And that almost everything in modern life is specifically designed to make sure you never stop long enough to find it. He died on the most distracted day in American history. Maybe that was just timing, or maybe it's exactly the kind of thing he spent his whole life saying we should notice. Next episode, we go deeper.